I had a bit of a juggle trying to answer this question, which was in the program. What is the influence of the media on identity? Because, I mean, I realize how we would all love to be able to answer that huge, enormous question, but I sure can't. And I don't think any academic or scientist really could. I mean, certainly not in 20 minutes, right? So I decided to narrow it down a little bit and to talk about one particular aspect of identity, which is gender, and how gender becomes a kind of an issue in contemporary online social media, and how it sort of feeds a number of debates that we've been having about identity politics. My own interest, I mean, besides superheroes and Star Wars, which I'll talk about later, is in politics. So, I guess a lot of us, I mean, I'm still sort of, feeling this weird combination of a little bit of relief over the election outcome here, but also just, a return of the incessant feeling that things are just getting worse and worse and worse in terms of political positions, how we're shifting further and further to the right, how somebody like Thierry Baudet, this is the thing I can't get over, how Thierry Baudet can have been elected to parliament, but I'll return to that later on. So I'll just start with something a little bit frivolous and silly, because those are the things that I like. How many people know the movie Ghostbusters? Yeah, okay, so a bunch of people, right? So Ghostbusters is not a particularly good movie, in my opinion, but it's a classic of 1980s Hollywood blockbuster cinema, right? About three nerdy guys who decide to hunt ghosts. That's kind of it, really. For a lot of white men, this movie turns out, we learned this last year, turns out to have been particularly meaningful for their sense of identity. And we found that out because Sony, which owns the rights to Ghostbusters, decided to make a remake in which they recast the film with women in the lead roles. Honestly, I don't have very strong feelings about Ghostbusters. But even if I did, I don't think I would really care so much that they did another version of it with characters of another gender. But a lot of people really cared a lot. One reason why I would actually kind of applaud this idea is that the fact that if you go to Hollywood movies and you're not white and male and straight, it's really kind of hard to find adequate representation, if you know what I mean. I mean, representation is really the key thing that we use to relate to, to create meaning when we watch movies or watch TV. We want to recognize ourselves in what we see. And a lot of film theory has really held that if you're not a man and if you're not white and you're not straight, you sort of have to learn to think like a straight white male in order to even, be able to enjoy a movie at all, right? Because most movies are made by straight white men, and their ideas about how they write and how they portray women and ethnic minorities is entirely shaped by their experience of the world, right? So one of the very touching things, even though the Ghostbusters remake, has anybody seen it? It's kind of a shitty movie. It's not really good, but I applaud the idea for this reason, right? This is a photo that was taken at the red carpet premiere. I mean, just look at that girl, right? This little black girl over here in her Ghostbusters outfit, and she's shaking hands with Kristen Wiig, who's a very famous comedian. She was in Bridesmaids, which led a lot of male movie reviewers to suddenly discover that women could be funny. It's like, oh my God, women comedians can be super funny. Look at the way she's looking up at this. The reason that what I see there, what I might be projecting on her face, is the delight of a kid who's always being stuck with fucking Disney princesses, growing up. And now there are these kick-ass, women who wear overalls and who go out and catch ghosts. And that's awesome. And it gives her an opportunity to relate because she's being represented. She can recognize herself in a big Hollywood movie. And in that sense, representation really matters, right? Not because everybody always has to be represented equally, but because there is such an imbalance in how gender and ethnicity is represented in Hollywood movies that it becomes kind of a big deal, right? So, and especially if the reality that we live in, I mean, if we lived in some kind of utopian, gender-neutral, post-racist world, right? None of that, it wouldn't matter so much, but I kind of like this cartoon because, you know, it's like the female Ghostbusters finding out that, like in reality, the Ghostbusters in the movie make less money than their male counterparts for doing the exact same job, right? So, it's just a little chart to just illustrate, in case you're wondering, like, is that really true? Could it really be the case that white men sort of run the media industry? Like, the disproportionateness of the degree of disproportionality, I guess would be the word, in terms of gender, especially when you the camera, like the people writing the screenplays, shooting, using the cameras, designing the props, directing, stuff like that. We just saw the Paramount and what's the other one? Universal recently released their slate of films, big films that they're going to premiere in the next 2 years, and not one of them is directed by a woman, right? So there's a huge degree of disproportionality in terms of gender representation behind the camera. And this is a kind of funny, like, empirical study that some people did last year into Disney princess movies, which is like another obsession of mine, right? Where they just counted all the lines of dialogue, and then they said, well, and then they connected it to gender. So how many times does a female character speak versus how many times does a male character speak in movies that are about Disney princesses, right? So let's get that clear. These are movies for girls and about girls, basically, right? And then we find, even if we think, like I'm often tempted to think that we're always making social progress in a way, and that like feminists are slowly but surely winning the war against inequality. And you look historically and you're like, holy shit, like in the 1950s, they were doing better in terms of female representation of Disney princesses, right? Than they were in the allegedly feminist Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Mulan, that kind of stuff, right? So, you know, like Tangled, even Frozen, like one of my personal favorites, it's still like the men who do most of the talking, which is kind of weird. So back to Ghostbusters, right? So Ghostbusters, they announced the thing. A lot of men sort of go, oh my God, they can't do that. That movie is sacred, and they're ruining our childhoods by doing it, and start spreading these kinds of images around, right? In utter shock that they would take a cherished classic like Ghostbusters and totally ruin it by having women play the lead characters. And this took on a kind of weird, excessive ugliness that is almost like it's impossible even to describe, right? These kinds of images explaining, so feminists, this isn't about women, it's not about misogyny, it's about our childhood, stop making it about you, right? This is in response to my idea, fairly rational argument that women would benefit from more positive representation in Hollywood movies. But in this case of Ghostbusters, as in every other case, you don't want to change anything because it's not about you, it's about like our nostalgia for our childhoods. Which, you know, to me, again, it doesn't make sense because it's not like the old movie ceases to exist, right? You can watch it whenever you want, but that a remake would be so bold as to swap genders is clearly unacceptable. It gets a lot uglier than this, like part of the kind of, you know, weird publicity campaign that they did for the movie was having the actresses go to hospitals in their Ghostbusters outfits to visit sick and dying children and to sort of, you know, be like cleany clowns for them or something like that, right? So Ghostbusters cheer up sick children in surprise hospital visit. Also, again, to sort of try to emphasize the idea that it's not just about making a lot of money with a new Hollywood movie, but it's the fact that having women as the only lead characters in a movie. Like, a lot of movies have women in them, but they're usually, like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Smurfette principle, but usually it's like you have a whole bunch of dudes and one woman, right? And there's usually, like, she's in love with two of the men, and she has to sort of pick one. Yeah. So in this movie, none of them are defined by their relationship to a man, which is kind of unique, and they're not all white, which is also kind of nice. And they're all doing their own thing professionally, right? So these kinds of images started going around, and on platforms like 4chan, 8chan, Infinity Chan, Reddit. In the Netherlands, you have things like geenstijl.nl and a couple of other of those places, those breeding grounds for white, straight, male radicalization, really. You get these images that they took that they use for promotional purposes and start making them, funny by making fun of them, by assuming that whatever they're doing, everybody hates it to the degree that these guys hate it. And it gets really, really ugly when you see what kind, like this is only one of them. I can't even read it out loud. I hope you can read it there. But the idea that, and this is just to illustrate the kind of language and the kind of ideas that percolate in these online environments that are frequented by mostly young, but, again, men of all classes and all ages who have enormous digital skills, right? So, like, in that sense, they're like me, they're nerds. They're interested in nerd stuff like comic books and superheroes and Star Wars and things like that, right? But having grown up with movies like that, and with a culture like ours in which too many of our cultural texts are basically telling you, including these Disney movies, that if you're a guy and you do what's expected of you, you will be rewarded with a woman, right? Who will simply you will get access to her body and you will become her owner in a way, right? That's the reward. And this is the way Hollywood movies work. The only function of the woman is to become the reward for the boy who becomes a man, right? So if that's the toxic ideology that you grow up with, then all of a sudden, everybody who is countering that, right, including the fact that online spaces like social media provide lots of environments for debates and stages where women can also express themselves critically, now all of a sudden they become direct threats to their sense of entitlement and masculinity, right? And therefore it becomes the enemy. So guys like Milo Yiannopoulos, I don't know if you've heard of him, but that became a huge thing, right? Yeah, a big spokesperson for the alt-right or basically the neo-Nazi movement. He's spoken on many campuses about how feminism is a curse on mankind and it degrades women, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's doing this for the lulz, right? He's always saying this is just to provoke discussion and it's all about free speech, et cetera, et cetera. But he basically trolled and harassed Ghostbusters actress Leslie Jones until she quit Twitter, and it got him a permanent ban. So he's now banned from Twitter, which according to his followers, now he's being censored and oppressed because white men are always being censored and oppressed in one way or the other. So it's this syndrome or this phenomenon that fits very uncomfortably, but clearly in a context where guys like Donald Trump get to be president just simply on the fact that they're white, rich, and male, right? And it's not just that, right? There's Milo again. There's guys here in the Netherlands like Jan Roos, and of course, that dude who just got elected yesterday, right? People who were saying, and I was just last night, to refresh my memory, in case you're thinking but wasn't Thierry Baudet the kind of weird, funny, sweet guy, who's so civilized, who plays the piano, who smells lavender pouches and stuff like that. Just to refresh my memory, I watched The Wereld Door the other night where he defended rape culture in terms of the problem with men is that they're too insecure. And when they see a pretty girl in a bar, they're too scared to walk up to them. And what women actually want, I see a lot of women here, right? What they really want is for a man to come up to them. And then when you say, no, please leave me alone, that just means you want them to be stronger and to break through that barrier. I see everybody going, yeah, totally. That's what we want, right? We want to be harassed and stalked by men who feel entitled to our bodies. So in that context, right? In that context of a kind of white supremacist, rising tide that we're seeing, the Trump effect that we're now, we're sort of relieved that, Wilders didn't get, I am anyway, that Wilders didn't get a huge number of votes, but still, we're stuck in this issue. It occurred to me, to connect that to the ideas of masculinity that have helped Trump win the presidency. And these are two sort of, amateur videos. They're mashups of the movies 300 at the top and Terminator 2 at the bottom. And when I first came across them in my Facebook feed on social media, I was like, oh, these are parodies. They're just making fun, or something like that. Because I'm used to fan culture, people being very creative and people being very funny with it. But then I investigated a little bit further. These are both made and distributed by a guy who is a Swedish guy who calls himself Aryan Wisdom. He's a Nazi who runs a website that distributes Nazi poetry and also provides free online lessons for how to make videos like this. And what it shows you is an idea. You should watch these online with the sound on there, scary but hilarious. It's all about like Trump representing a very specific type of masculinity that is about overpowering everybody around you. Yeah. Including obviously women, right? Therefore the fact that Trump bragged about sexual assault, has been married many times over, always to women much younger than him, and sort of, what's the word, like presented as being like an object of desirability or whatever. Those aren't bugs, right? Those are features. Like for a lot of men, that means like, oh man, he's got it made. Not only is he rich, but he gets to marry all these cool hot models. When he gets tired of them, he divorces them and he grabs them by the pussy and whatever, right? Those are the things that are new to politics now. These are things that if you were a politician 5 or 10, certainly 15 years ago, right, you could just get packing and go home because it was a scandal. But in this growing culture of toxic masculinity, it's a feature, right? It's something that excites people, that makes them hungry for a strong leader who will, give out a clear kind of direction. Surrounded, of course, obviously, by other white men making decisions about women's uteruses. So then, finally, to get to Star Wars, right? So Star Wars has always been a really problematic thing in terms of gender, because it has that Smurfette principle again, right? When I was a kid and I would play Star Wars with my friends, until I was about, 25 or something, and I stopped doing it. I had mostly male friends, and like fortuitously, usually one girl who would play along, and that was great because there weren't a whole lot of characters that you could play and still be a girl, right? So there was Princess Leia surrounded by all these different types. And if you're a man, you could be Chewbacca. There's even more fucking robots as main characters than there are women in Star Wars. So, but like at the same time, Princess Leia has become, not only through these movies, but also through actress Carrie Fisher's advocacy of feminism and disability rights, has become a kind of icon of feminist progress, right? So her portrait as an emblem of the resistance, right, has become incredibly meaningful in the context of Trump. So when we now look at the recent Star Wars movies, are there any other Star Wars fans? Yeah, a couple, right? So the last 2 Star Wars movies, The Force Awakens and Rogue One, and there's another one coming this December, right? They both have female characters at the center of them. And that's part of a larger trend, you could say, of they're not the only series or movies that have had strong female characters at the center, but within film, this is still sort of exceptional, right? And I guess The Hunger Games was a big deal. But when you look at how, I got very excited when I saw the first trailers for Star Wars, for the new Star Wars. But when you look at how these radicalized white men respond on their internet forums, it's with stuff like this, right? It's the fact that there's a black man in a central role. That means he has to be portrayed as the most egregious racist caricature being held by an anti-Semitic stereotype. All of a sudden, the fact that Star Wars has become more diverse is about what people are calling white genocide, which is something that doesn't exist. I mean, historically, there has been no white genocide, but that has become the term for being proud of your own race and standing up for whiteness, etc. And promoting that using these super offensive images. We got one more minute, right? Yeah, so I'll wrap things up. A little less. Okay, so less than a minute. So this, right, these are the kinds of images that are then circulated in order to prove this point that white men are under attack, are being oppressed, while ethnic minorities and women are being shoved in our faces by the cultural Marxists and politically correct police or whatever, while at the same time, I'll skip the clip here and scoot right on to the end, while at the same time, the troubling fact is that for many, the biggest existing Star Wars, or organized Star Wars fan club is this thing called the 501st Legion, which is dudes who dress up like stormtroopers and get together and march, and they're everywhere, all over the world. So, to finish then, right, and this is why, to finish, I'll just say, for Rogue One, It had its issues, if you've seen it, right? But it was, in a sense, it was really a great kind of statement to make, and one that becomes very meaningful in this context, because for once, right, we get not just a big Hollywood franchise action movie with a female lead who is independent and strong and empowered, but she's also surrounded by a team that is made up entirely of non-white ethnic minorities. And to make that even, in a way, cooler, but also more pertinent to our current situation, we also know, because of the narrative organization, that they have to end up sacrificing themselves. So the whole thing becomes about fighting a rising tide of white male supremacy by sacrificing and by committing to a struggle with an uncertain outcome, but one that is really worth joining. Anyway, that's all the time. That's more than the time I had, but thanks for listening.